Hello, I am the Minister of Common Sense, and in this, the third video on my channel, the subject that I wish to talk about is the influence of the left and the far left in the institutions of this country, the NHS, the police, the civil service, in sport, and, most worrying of all, the media and the education system. Since the election of Tony Blair and the birth of so-called New Labour, every facet of this country has moved to the left and far left. The institutional and political goalposts have moved so far to the left since 1997 that long-held opinions and the people that have them are considered to be far right. New Labour, I believe, was not a political movement at all. It was a social experiment that was the brainchild of Tony Blair and his Islington friends to see just how far their policies could take the entire population of Great Britain to the left, to accept behaviour, laws, political decisions and lifestyles which were in 1997 abhorrent to the average man or woman on the street. They knew that to push their agenda, the key was to target the young and sow seeds at an early age to encourage them to accept and promote what their parents found unacceptable. So education was the key, as access to fertile young minds would enable them to shape their thinking in the future. Politics has always been about putting your argument forward, but now, if anyone expresses an opinion that goes against the new way of thinking and narrative, or dares to protest at what they see every day in real life, it can ultimately end in a prison sentence. I have to be very careful what I say on this channel to stay on the right side of the law, so free speech is under threat. When Blair made his now famous speech at the New Labour Party conference in October 1996 that education, education, education would be his party's philosophy, many assumed that he would devote resources to improving the overall quality of the education that children would receive, not subtle indoctrination that over the years since has become far more obvious to those of us from senior generations. Teachers now blatantly advertise their political affiliations and readily pass on their opinions to their pupils. During the run-up to the Brexit referendum, many wore Remain badges and made it clear to their pupils that anyone who wished to vote Leave was, in their opinion, a closet racist, a xenophobe, ignorant, and a little Englander. The same can be said if, God forbid, their parents expressed a positive opinion of Donald Trump, who, as far as the woke liberal left is concerned, is the devil incarnate. The irony of this is that the word liberal is defined as open to new ideas and other people's opinions, freedom and tolerance. Not all teachers share the new opinions, but to advertise them to their colleagues would be tantamount to career suicide. When I was at school, we could tell that certain teachers leaned towards the left. They occasionally wore CND badges on their jackets, and they taught art or drama. Teachers taught the curriculum in a fair and balanced manner, and never passed on their opinions on any subject to us. They just gave us facts, and we formed our own opinions as we matured and experienced life. We then saw the rise in university attendance, and the old polytechnics being rebranded as urban universities. People were happy that more young people would have the opportunity to do what their parents never thought they would be able to do, and gain a degree and letters after their name. Many of my generation have now had the chance to watch their children graduate, and feel, like all good parents should, that their children have really achieved something special, and are on the path to do better in life than they had. They have, however, discovered, as have the graduates, that not only are they in debt to the tune of £50,000, which, because of the high interest rates, is most likely to hang like a financial albatross around their necks for their whole working life, but that degrees from non-Russell Group universities hold little weight in the job market. Parents have discovered that their children have polar opposite opinions on many subjects to them, and that what was thought of as abnormal is now considered normal, and what was normal is now considered abnormal. We now have this subtle indoctrination happening in state schools. Many of the best achieving high schools and grammar schools are targeted by the left, who wish to pass on their ideas to those that will be in positions of responsibility in the future. Girls seem to be targeted the most, with feminist ideals being promoted and an opinion that men are manipulators whose only wish is to control them and dominate. The process is now being used on primary school-aged children who are being bombarded with political correctness and woke progressive doctrines and are primed to correct their parents and grandparents if they utter a single word that goes against the new narrative of multiculturalism, sexual and gender fluidity, and acceptance of all behavior, no matter how extreme, and the opinion that we British are responsible for all of the world's problems and therefore owe a debt and an apology to the rest of the world. What is also worrying is how these opinions and the people that express them have percolated into the civil service, who traditionally took pride in being politically neutral, the police, who now seem to be an extension of the social services, not an organization that was created to arrest the guilty and protect the innocent, the armed forces, where there was a plan recently to change the motto of the British Army from "Be the best," because it may make foreign armies feel inferior and hurt their feelings, and the NHS, which is a financial leviathan that refuses to tolerate any kind of reform, spends money like water while pleading poverty, and is now at the most militant in its history. Employees are more than willing to strike and jeopardize their patients' lives as long as they get a salary increase that the average worker can only dream of. The media, who once again are in a position where they truly can control the way that people think, is riven with left-wing graduates who filter and distort the news and program content to suit their progressive agenda. The BBC, which was respected worldwide for its content, professionalism, and impartiality, is now the epitome of this and the mouthpiece of left-wing liberal progressive views. Virtually all of the great situation comedies that were produced before 2020 are now unable to be shown on the BBC that produced them, as they may offend a small minority. Their casting of actors and actresses in roles that portray real people from history of a completely different race or even sex makes a mockery of those programs. The recent scandal involving Donald Trump's speech, which was edited and spliced to portray its contents in a completely different light, is a prime example, and quite rightly he has launched legal proceedings which, if successful, could bankrupt the organization. I believe that what lies behind all this is to produce a population who are ignorant of any positives of their own history, feel ashamed of their nationality, take the knee at the drop of a hat, and are led to believe that they are free thinkers when they actually all think the same on every subject, so they are less likely to protest when the land that their ancestors built, and more importantly, our precious way of life that previous generations fought and died in their millions to preserve over the course of a millennium, can be given away as though it was nothing. Sport has also been targeted, with the sickening sight of footballers taking the knee following the death of George Floyd, a convicted career criminal who was killed by the police on another continent. We have also seen the bizarre spectacle of biological men competing in women's sport, including boxing and athletics. Mass manipulation of the population is nothing new. Religion held power over the people of all faiths across the globe for centuries. People have lived their whole lives for something that has never actually been proved to exist, and followed strict religious texts written by mortal men who have been considered as prophets whose message comes from the mouth of their chosen God. Humans have fought and died willingly, and committed atrocities that to any logical person seem unbelievable. Women accused of being witches were drowned or burned alive in 16th and 17th century Europe. Prepubescent boys being castrated to preserve their boy soprano singing voices by the Catholic Church. Human sacrifices by pagans and tribes who consumed human flesh, butchered women and children, burned, raped and enslaved other humans, and did things that most modern people find unbelievable. Even today in parts of the world, some of this is still happening. In Great Britain, we have had new words and phrases added to our dictionary as a result of religious doctrine, such as female genital mutilation, honor killing, breast ironing, and jihad. Children throughout history have shown how adults in a position of power and responsibility can manipulate them into doing the most unchildlike things. From the powder monkeys of the Royal Navy, the drummer boys of the Napoleonic Wars, and in modern times, the child soldiers in West Africa, and in the mid-part of the last century, the children of Germany, who from the early 1920s were exposed to the full force of mass indoctrination via the education system and media that existed at that time, who became fervent Nazis, who joined the Hitler Youth, and were quite willing to die for their cause, and as young adults had no compassion for fellow human beings as they loaded them into gas chambers. Children would inform on their own parents if they dared to contradict the opinions that they had been manipulated into believing, even though they knew that the consequences could be imprisonment, torture, and even their death. Even after Germany surrendered, a huge portion of the German population still held Nazi ideals until the day they died, no matter what they saw of the atrocities committed in the extermination camps. What I see happening in this country, in my opinion, is so similar to pre-war Germany that it makes me feel sick. In some ways it is worse because there is far more subtlety to this agenda, and it's portrayed as advancing mankind and creating harmony, when in all actuality it's causing more division. I have been warning right-of-centre politicians that this is happening for over 20 years and advising that when in power they launch an investigation into this, but to no avail. Failure to act will be the end of right-wing politics. I think that we are approaching a point where new parents are given a list of the accepted opinion on every subject and warned that any deviation from this will be punished. To conclude, I would say that the left wing are set on destroying everything that I and most of you hold dear. Ironically, they are now supporting the most far-right religion and labeling anyone who dares to speak out as far-right. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel. I really can't stress how important it is. And don't forget, listen to the lion, because the lion never lies.